Welcome to Faith Over Breakfast. You are listening to a podcast by Pastor Eric Siepen and Pastor Andy Littleton. If you enjoy Faith Over Breakfast, we encourage you to rate it on the Apple Podcast app, on Spotify, or Google Play. Thank you and enjoy the podcast. Welcome to Faith Over Breakfast. My name is Eric Siepen. Across from me is Ashley Cousineau, our number one fan of Faith Over Breakfast, and her husband, who he's a fan, but he's not number one, Michael Cousineau.
He's like number 75.
He's number 75. Yeah, so if, average podcast, it's about 100 listens, and so he listens. He's the 75th listener.
There we go.
There you go.
Yeah.
He fills it out a few weeks later. He's like, oh, yeah, maybe I should listen to that one podcast. But they're here. We talked about being neighbors. We talked about Roe versus Wade. I think we got a really different kind of take on it from last time we did a podcast. But thanks for coming, guys.
You're welcome.
It was really, really nice.
Thanks for having us.
And just, hey, if you support us, you can do that right on Apple and Spotify. There's a little place you can click. And you can support us. And if you do support us, we'll put you on the podcast if you live in Tucson. Or if you want to fly down and be on the podcast, fly down and be on the podcast. We don't pay for the flights. But we'd love to have you on the podcast. So support us. If you support us, it just puts, rubber bands on our microphones and
for
things
sure.
like that.
Help keep the lights on maybe a little bit.
Yeah, keep the lights on at the village. But yeah, thanks, guys.
Email your questions too
at
yes. faithoverbreakfast@gmail.com.
And get a book.
Yeah, get a book.
Yeah, get a book. All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye. Thank you.
Okay. Well, the whole intro is done last, so
we'll do
we're right into this. So here we go.
All right.
Hi, Ashley, and welcome to the podcast. Hi, Michael. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi.
I'm Eric, as everybody already knows because they'll have heard of that. But you guys are married and live across the street from me.
Yes, we do.
Mm-hmm. Why? Why do you live across the street from me? That's the question today. Well, I should actually start before I talk about that. Ashley is on the podcast, and Andy's not here because I don't know what Andy's doing. He canceled. But Ashley...
What a jerk.
Let's just put it out there. He heard that Ashley was going to be here.
And then he got out.
He's scared of the lawyer.
He's afraid of the lawyer.
Get some female energy on this podcast.
Yeah, I've heard that there should be more female energy on podcasts that I do. But yeah, so we had this little promotional like, hey, donate some money and you can be on the podcast. So you did it. So you are like a benefactor of Faith Over Breakfast.
Is there a plaque or something that I could, I want to be first. Well, Corey should be first and then I'll be second.
You know what? Let's do a benefactor list right there and we'll put like the benefactors on one of these black sound dampeners.
Do we get to steal something from the room? Like just take a random object that we want?
A random object. It'll have to be
a Faith Over Breakfast. We steal stuff.
It can't be my Luther Playmobil.
Oh, that was what I was looking at.
It's one of my favorite things.
Oh, I know.
That my daughter got me.
That was very special. Okay, so no, I'm not going to take that. It's all right.
Maybe the Jesus figurine up there.
I'm very happy just to be here.
Yeah.
Michael's here because my money is his money, and so when I donate, we donate. So
yeah, because you're one. All right, so let's just start because people don't even know who you guys are. Basically, how do you know me, and how did you meet in a real short version?
Okay. I guess Ashley's looking to me to do this.
Well, you go first because you met him first.
That's true. Yeah. Okay. So I showed up to go to the University of Arizona for school.
How long ago was that?
That was in 2005. Yeah. So it's a long time ago now. And
you look just the same too.
A few more gray hairs. That might be my fault.
Yeah. I definitely have more gray in my hair. I've got a beard now. I didn't then. But yeah, I guess people still think of me somewhat of the same way. I get confused with Ron Lehman a little less.
That's good.
Yeah. But sometimes that's still talked about. I think
Which was your roommate?
Yeah. So me and another guy came from San Luis Obispo. That's where we had been going to school, and we came out here to go to school. He was going for his master's degree in engineering, and I was coming to finish up my undergrad. I had quit engineering and was completely changing to philosophy. And we knew someone else who had also come from San Luis Obispo and was already a part of the village, attending regularly, and she invited us to come and said, this is a great church. I'm getting a lot out of it. I think this is a place where you guys should check out. So we checked out the church. We were checking out a bunch of other churches in the morning, and we came in the evening. The church used to only meet in the evening. We eventually realized that was stupid. Like, why were we getting up in the morning? Neither of us were morning people. None of the
and you still are evening people.
Yeah, exactly. To this day, and not a morning
Vesper
person.
service, 100%.
Exactly. Right. So we were like, this is dumb. None of the other churches are nearly as good as what we have at the village. So why are we wasting our mornings and our sleep checking out other churches? But we felt like for a little while we had to do our due diligence or something like that. And we've been here ever since. Ron has stuck around the whole entire time. I left for a while because I was going to go work on a graduate degree in philosophy, and I finished up maybe half of that.
Well, you get your master's.
Right. I managed to put it in a way that it gave me a piece of paper that says that I did something. But yeah. So, and then while I was up in Colorado at the University of Colorado in Boulder, I met Ashley. She was doing her law degree. We met through an intervarsity graduate fellowship group, a Christian group for graduate students, and we got married. She finished law school. I finished up my master's, and we decided to move back here because of the village. And when we got married, Eric was in my wedding party. He was a groomsman. Ron came up as well. Sue was there, and a couple other people from the village came to our wedding. So, I mean, I still, even then, back in 2011, thought of the village as still my church, my closer friends.
Right.
Even though I had been gone at that point for 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
Right. So we returned after 5 years, or I returned after 5 years, but then Ashley was with me there at that point. She was really the driving force more than me, although I had the relationship. She was the force to say, Tucson makes a lot of sense. Like, she didn't want to be in the snow anymore. She wanted to have
Texas.
She wanted to have something that was close to what she was used to with Texas. The economics made a lot of sense for us. We at least had the hope of owning a house down in Tucson as opposed to renting for an eternity.
Like,
yeah, if we had moved to Austin, where she's from, in Texas, or if we had moved to the central coast of California, where I'm originally from, we would probably still be renting.
Right. Yeah, definitely you would be renting.
Exactly. Right. And maybe with like not really any hope of getting a house anytime soon.
Right.
So, and also we have degrees, like we have a master's and a JD, right, a law degree, and those are like a dime a dozen in places like the Central Coast of California and Austin. I mean, they sound really impressive. I don't want to like undersell us, but I mean, like in Tucson,
not that impressive.
in Tucson, that's something. Other places, it's not.
You got a little bit more limited pull in Tucson.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. So there was a lot of things, but the main thing was that we had these really deep relationships, or at least I did, and Ashley saw the value of that and said, this makes a lot of sense. Let's go there. And let's not stay in Boulder because all of our friends who are just in graduate school are going to end up leaving. And at this point, it's definitely happened. I don't think there's really even a single person, maybe except for like maybe a couple, maybe two people, like literally 2 people that we still know that really live in Boulder anymore.
Right.
And no one that we were really in close community with.
Right. And whereas here in Tucson, just about everybody that I was close friends with in Tucson as part of the church are still here, and even more of them like came back over the course of time.
Right. It's interesting stories about how people return to the village.
Yeah, exactly. And this is one of the things that brought us here in the first place. I mean, it all just kind of feeds back on itself in the explanation. Like, that goes to show exactly the kind of community that was drawing us back and drew other people back. And so we rented for a couple of years, and then we were looking for a house to buy. We really wanted to get out of the renting situation and start putting our money towards ownership. And we were looking around for houses, and the house across the street from you came up for sale. Ashley didn't want to see it at all because it didn't have a dishwasher.
Yeah, well, we lived in married student housing up in Boulder, and it was very bare bones, kind of 1970s style apartment with no dishwasher. And I vowed to myself that day that I would never live again without a dishwasher. But then Michael said, well, we could put one in. And that for some reason had not occurred to me, because at that time I was getting used to having money, and I thought that, renovations and things like that were only things that people who had money would do. And so I was like, we don't have money to put in a dishwasher, but it's really not that expensive to put in a dishwasher. And we had a friend who also goes to the village who helped us out and put in the dishwasher, because once I saw the house, I was like, this is perfect. It wasn't, if you've ever looked for real estate in Tucson, you will find that there's a lot of random add-ons to homes and
yes,
rooms without windows, or very long, like Arizona rooms that they've like closed in a porch, and you're like, can I go bowling in here? Like, what's the purpose of this room? So it was nice to have a house that like all the flooring was the same. It had been nicely maintained. It didn't have any weird rooms or additions. And it was right across the street from Eric and his crew. So we got in a bit of a bidding war, but we ended up getting the house. So we're very happy. That was 8.5 years ago, or no, 7.5 years ago. So we love our house. We've done some work on it and made it our own. And we just love, I think, going back to what Michael said about, the draw of the village, it was something that I had seen after Michael and I got married. We came down to Tucson because a good family friend of his was getting married in Tucson, and it was about a week after our wedding, and I had met a couple of the villagers who had come up for our wedding, but it was really, brief, because weddings are chaotic. And so I was kind of, all over the place that night, but, some people from the village came and or invited us over to the church to have a little wedding reception while we were in town for Michael's friend's wedding. And so I really got to meet some people at the village, and was really drawn into, how they related to people, how kind they were, how welcoming they were. And that kind of got me thinking about, well, maybe this could make sense for us. So, I suggested it when we were getting ready to finish up school, and Michael was like, oh, I can't go back to the heat.
Yes.
I remember having that conversation with you on the phone.
Oh,
Yeah.
man. Yeah. Yeah, my vow was that I was never going to live without air conditioning again, because the first 2 years that I lived here.
Right. Swamp coolers.
Oh,
and
man.
oh my goodness. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And that was not even a great swamp cooler.
No,
that
you
was
had a terrible swamp
exactly cooler. Right. And somehow we made it, and I didn't even leave for the summers those years.
Yeah.
I just toughed it out and only slept between the hours of like 2 a.m. and 6 a.m.
Right.
for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Now we are thriving with dishwashers and air conditioning.
And I would just like to say that when going over to your house, it's often very cold. So yes, so we know that
The history of exactly.
The air conditioner works.
Yes.
The suffering has now
God, the
applied into the future. Yeah.
So much for long suffering.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So all right, so here you are, you're with us, and just quickly, Ashley, because we know that Michael's, I think he listens to some Faith Over Breakfast, but you are the Faith
She is
Over...
the super fan.
You're our super fan. So tell us a little bit about why you like Faith Over Breakfast, why you're a super fan.
I just really enjoy listening to your and Andy's perspective on, issues that are going on in the world. So I'm a lawyer, so I'm kind of, immersed in, worldly issues and trying to wrap my head around about what I think about things, because obviously conversations come up at work and professional settings, and, people know I'm a Christian, but, how do I engage in those kind of conversations in a respectful and kind of a Christ-like manner to better form relationships with those around me and be able to, figure out what I feel about, or how I, what I think about certain issues, or kind of engage with people on what they think about it. And so I just really enjoy the conversational aspect. I feel like almost like you're part of the conversation when you're listening. I enjoy the banter. That's really fun. And, I think because I know you, I don't know Andy, but I know you. So definitely, although sometimes it's funny, I was telling Michael this, I think I have to turn up, when you're talking, I have to turn up the volume. And when Andy's talking, I have to turn down the volume.
I have to work on that. That's the engineer's issue. And a part of it is because of how fast we edit things, and also because in the mornings, you get real. So I have to work on that. Yes.
Project your voice.
Well, when I listen to myself, I filter out myself so I can hear me speak. So I don't actually do a good job of monitoring my own volume levels.
You also know what you've said.
Yes. So it all fills in for me.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're our super fan, but you're also a lawyer. So we can make this really quick shift, because the last podcast that was up was on Roe versus Wade. And I know if Andy were here, he would want to know what you thought. So at some point he would ask you what you thought about it and where it's at and all that kind of stuff. So I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you have some thoughts, you could launch into those.
Sure. Yeah. I had mentioned to Eric when I heard the episode last week, I said, hey, I was supposed to be on the podcast, and I think this would be a good topic to talk about with a lawyer. But no, it's okay. Obviously the lawyer in me wants to say it's a draft opinion. So, it's still subject to change. So I think it's, it's obviously already created a lot of discussion about, this topic, and I don't know if it's going to affect the final outcome of the case. I think that this case brings a really, interesting, hard topic to examine, because, there are people who have very strong opinions on both sides about this issue. And I think that when you look at what the Supreme Court, what their job is to look at our laws and our founding document, the Constitution, and they're really not in the business of creating new laws. They're really looking at, the laws that are passed. Do they pass, this constitutional muster? And so I think that, I followed along with their reasoning. I read the whole draft opinion. I understand their reasoning, and I think that, it isn't something that's clearly expressed in in our Constitution. I think that there's arguments of the right to privacy and what all that entails. But I think that, really what's needed, and I think that legal scholars have been saying for years, shortly after Roe was passed back in the 70s, that this actually needs to be codified either by the United States Congress or by each individual state. And
which was impossible to do because of the Roe v. Wade decision.
Exactly. So it's a really challenging thing. I think, for myself, that's not something I would choose for myself, an abortion ever. I don't think that that is something I would look at. But there's a lot of, there's a lot of scenarios where, it's a difficult call. And when you've got our legislature, that's, I think people really don't have a whole lot of trust in our Congress, our representatives, because it's all kind of a joke. Like it's a popularity contest, and you're just trying to bash the other side, and no meaningful work gets done. If you look at the Arizona legislature this session, it's been a nightmare. They haven't been able to accomplish anything because it's so political. And so I think that people were relying on the court to come in and kind of the original opinion wasn't very, as far as a legal opinion, was not very well reasoned. It didn't really have it was basically like, we don't feel like this is, like, we feel like this should be a right, but we can't really articulate how we're getting there based on the original Constitution. So we're going to use this medical privacy right. But it's a little different because it involves the life of another, a child. And, there are, implications for, lots of, questions of viability. That's really hard to determine what that would be. So I think that, legally speaking, I think the opinion is right. The draft opinion is right that this really does need to be something that comes from the legislature. But I would say that this is a good opportunity to go out and research your candidates for your local elections, because honestly, they're the ones that are making the decisions that most directly impact your life. So, I hope that in the future, people can, sit down and have a rational discussion about some of these issues and be able to come up with some sort of resolution, because I think that it does a lot of times, it leads to so many other conversations about access to contraception and education and issues of poverty. And I think it does end up disproportionately affecting certain populations. So I think we need to think broader about how we can support pregnant women and young mothers and families beyond just the pregnancy process, but supporting them once they have the child, because I think there's a lot of work to be done. But I think, looking at it from a strictly legal perspective, I think that the opinion's probably right.
So can you give me just a little bit of, all right, so let's just say it does it's overturned. What does this look like for maybe the next few years when it comes to the courts, as states pass new laws and things? What's going to happen if the federal government doesn't manage to pull anything off?
Well, then each state will be left to decide their own abortion laws. And I think you can look at.
Will people challenge those laws?
Oh, certainly. Okay. I know the ACLU is, already gearing up to challenge a lot of laws. And I think it's going to depend on what the restrictions are going to be. I think that, if they ban abortion, even in cases where the mother's life's in danger, I really do think that could go back up to the court and say, well, you have an interest in your own life. And if your life is, unfortunately, it's not going to get, there may be some women, if a law like that is passed, that it may unfortunately pass before that would get back up before the court. But I think that, depending on how strict the abortion laws are. And this doesn't also, the opinion also says that, states could, permit abortion, for a longer period of time, and I think we've seen that in some states that they have passed pretty expansive abortion laws that, allow for abortion
which are also being challenged, right?
Which are also being challenged in the opposite way. So I think that, you could, the ultimate way to handle this would be to add an amendment to the Constitution, but we all know how difficult that is. And if you don't remember
In which direction, though?
In which direction? Yeah, what direction? It could be either direction.
Right.
So.
Yeah, so good luck passing a constitutional amendment in the direction that you prefer.
Yes.
Exactly, because you're going to have to get a lot of the country on board and
right.
get the states to ratify it. And with the political climate as it is right now, this is not going to happen. But I think like the as a human, from the human perspective, not looking at this from the legal perspective, I think that people really want to be seen in this issue. Like, they want to be heard, and they want to they just there's a lot of the reaction, I think, is out of, you know, a fear, and, you know, I think that some of that fear is quite legitimate, and it's, you know, it's kind of wrapped into all these issues of, you know, it's not just a reproductive issue, it's a feminism issue, it's a, you know, poverty issue, it's a race issue. I think there's so much wrapped up in it.
Yeah, it has so much rhetoric built around it. It's a pretty insane topic. But you're right. I think people do want to be heard, and it stirs up a lot of emotional angst, no matter where you stand on it.
Exactly, right? Exactly. Because, you know, it's protecting children, and, you know, and my job is to protect children. I mean, I work in child welfare. And I see that so many children get left behind after they're born. And so we need to do a lot to work. You know, if we care about life, we need to care about life at all stages of life. And I don't think we do that very well as a country. So
I would agree with you. That is something we all need to work on. And as a community and church, that's something we're trying to, in our small little way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do that. So,
well, Ashley, thank you for that. That was a well thought out, very clear.
It's definitely tricky, and I welcome, you know, conversation, because, you know, I definitely, you know, for myself have, you know, my opinions about for me, but, you know, I welcome other people's perspectives, and, you know, I want people to be loved and cared for, and, seen and heard. And, you know, this is a really, really tricky topic.
Yeah, it is.
So.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. That was really helpful and sobering. Mm-hmm. All at the same time.
Right.
We went from the cool, you guys moved down here and moved across the street from us, to talking about a very serious issue. But I guess that's how breakfast goes.
Yeah, that's life. It's life in community, and, you know, you talk about the fun stuff, but you also talk about the hard stuff too.
That is true. So, well, we could talk a little bit about, like, so during the pandemic, one of the things that we did is every Thursday would go over to your long driveway, because you have this long driveway, and it's one of the longer cement driveways in the neighborhood.
Yeah, it's strangely long.
It is,
because of this the way the lot of our house is shaped.
It is.
Yeah, they put the house like way far back in the lot, so our backyard is very tiny, but our front yard is massive. So.
Which I would like to say that though you guys have improved in taking care of the house, you in some ways have not reached the level of the predecessor. I haven't seen neither of you in your night coat sweeping the top of the roof. So that's one.
I have swept the top of the roof.
Not in your pajamas.
Not in my pajamas.
So
that's that I remember anyway.
And second, regularly they would come and power wash that huge cement.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure you guys haven't power washed it.
No.
Since I think you're falling down on things. But we would go sit on this.
Bring down the neighborhood.
Yeah. And we would dream, because you guys really, we kind of got this vision for, you know, having something on the front of your house. And
right.
So we dream about all the landscaping and the tearing out of the bush. I remember there's that one ugly tree. Mm-hmm. And we would talk almost every week about how to get rid of the ugly tree.
And then it was gone.
Yeah, it hid the view of the mountains and our neighbors. And it was just really, like, I always hated it too, because I would look out, you know, my front window, and I couldn't see on the
look out. If you actually model that, Ashley, we can't hear you.
Yeah, sorry. I look out. I'm putting my head around the right side of the microphone. You know, I couldn't see the street. It just felt very closed off.
Yes, because you had two trees.
Yes.
One terrible, ugly shrub tree, and then the biggest tree in the neighborhood. I don't actually think there is a tree in the neighborhood bigger than your huge pine tree.
Yeah, we definitely are contenders.
I'm pretty sure that pine tree was there, like in
before the house was built.
Oh yeah, it had to be a long, long time ago.
Right. It's a humongous pine tree. And so the pine tree is still there.
Yes.
I mean,
it's
still
had some modifications.
It's an ongoing issue between us and our other neighbors about the status of the pine tree and its pine needles and pine cones constantly dropping and all that kind of stuff.
But it provides great shade.
But we love that tree, and we're going to hang on to it for as long as we possibly can and take better care of it starting now and over the past couple of years. But we got rid of the Christmas tree looking cypress tree that blocked our view of the street, the mailbox, the mountains, our neighbors, and it is gone, and it's so much better.
And you've completely landscaped the front.
Apparently our mailman loved it, though. He was so sad that we got rid of it. And I was like, anyway. And we got rid of the Palo Verde tree, which Ashley is deathly allergic to. And it keeps trying to grow back that little...
From the root.
From the
root.
Those things are just nasty mean.
And we tried to put in all native plants, because eventually, because we're not the kind of people that go out in our pajamas and sweep the roof and power wash our driveway, we would love for it to just take care of itself without as much input from us. But right now, we're trying to be pretty diligent about taking care of all this stuff. But I mean, I think the most important piece that we put in is that we poured a concrete front porch area, with seating and a fireplace, and to bring forward what we had started doing by meeting on the driveway. Right. And so we've tried now to be out there once a week or so, and because we loved it. We loved doing that with you.
Yeah, it was fun.
Right? And
it was our only source of community during COVID. You know, they would sit at one end of the driveway, we'd sit at the other.
Right. Our only source of in-person interaction. I mean, we had plenty of Zoom, but it's just not the same at all.
No, not the same.
And it was funny because, I mean, we started out sitting across from each other, but like very far away from each other, like very, very distant. Yeah. And we over time, like as things got more relaxed, we started to actually like move in towards each other, and we could actually be in like touching distance. But so now it's set up like that in a way that seems very intentional, rather than, you know, haphazardly on the driveway, like dual using the driveway as a front porch. And we've gotten to know our neighbors in ways that we had never done before, simply by just being out there and seeing people and waving to them, and then them making some like one-off comment like, hey, the yard's coming along, and be like, yep, thanks. But just those small little interactions building up over time to create these relationships. Right.
And that's even helped create some other relationships with people in the neighborhood, like your neighbors, and then Mark that lives back from behind us and stuff like that. So that's been really cool.
Yeah, it's been really fun to kind of experience the, you know, because we had lived there when the time the pandemic COVID hit, you know, it was 2020. We had lived there for 6 years at that point. And we didn't really know our neighbors that well, except for you guys. You know, we knew you guys, but we didn't really spend much time outside. I think a lot of times we were kind of ashamed of our yard because we just kind of let it go, and you know, we wanted to redo it, but we just didn't have the money. And so then COVID came along, and we got, you know, the money saved up to really make the yard what we wanted it to be. And I think now, we talk to a lot of our neighbors now, and know them, and we're going to the baby shower of our next door neighbors in a couple weeks, so looking forward to that. And just really digging into, you know, the community around you in your physical proximity.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the cool things has been, I mean, Sue and I have lived in community with Keith and Julie, and now you guys live across the street, and so we've all started to a little bit better to know our neighbors and stuff like that. But then even every other week, you guys come and join us, and people who are really actually newer to our community come, the village, the church, come and have dinner with us. And so we get to do that together as a community. And this is fun to have these rhythms where we are caring for one another and caring for people. And yes, Friday we are open to pray for the neighborhood, which is another thing, like trying once a month to get together just to pray for our neighbors in our neighborhood. So that's a fun part. Like, it's kind of evolved actually out of COVID in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Out of the quarantine of because I think for me personally, and being a pastor, I had gotten so busy and so caught into what was happening here, and there's a lot of people and all that kind of stuff, that the neighborhood is and and even you guys, like, we were all just doing our thing, and so it really slowed us down to reshape some of our rhythms, which I really appreciated.
Yeah, and it's good, and it's been a long time coming. So I mean, the seeds of this were sown when you and Keith and Julie, Sue, and even another couple at one point, like, and some single people over time, like, you decided you were going to live together,
Yes,
in the same house, and then other people have bought houses kind of nearby, not as nearby as us.
yeah, you
right?
guys really moved in.
Right, we really, yeah, we
You're like,
really,
"That house,
we
we
really
got it,
got
go."
up and close and uncomfortable with you. Yeah, I mean, so other people have moved close by, and it facilitates this kind of thing to happen. Yeah, it catalyzed over COVID, but if it hadn't have been set up, like if we hadn't decided to buy the house across the street, even if COVID had hit, it wouldn't have allowed for the same kind of opportunity.
Yeah.
where you literally can walk 30 seconds or less across the
Yes.
street, right? I mean, I haven't timed it. I should probably time it exactly
Yes.
how
It's
long
about
it takes.
10.
Yeah, but I mean, it just takes no time at all, very little effort, and we need that because we're so set in our ways. Like, we'd really like to stay in our comfy chair, comfy couch, TV show on, whatever. But the less energy it takes to just go over to somebody's place, the more likely we are to do it.
Yes,
And that's one of the things that I think our church has been moving in the direction of for a long time, and it's nice to see it come together. And we're putting a lot of intentional effort and direction from the leadership to be like praying for our neighborhoods and getting together with the people that are part of our church who live close by to us now,
right.
and trying to put that into action and see. And we've been seeing a lot of stuff happen because of that. So people being in relationship to us, in relationship to church members getting to know each other, lots of prayer happening,
Right.
New people attending the church. I mean, there's been a lot of really great outcomes because of that.
Yeah.
And
So true.
and we barely just started.
Yeah.
So
it's
so we
exciting.
should keep going.
Yeah. It is
Right.
really, really exciting.
And then another house opens up for sale on Seneca Street. Come live by us. Come join our join our club. It's
Come
pretty
join
fun.
the club.
It costs a little more than just donating to Faith Over Breakfast, but
Yeah.
All right. Well, I don't know. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about? Or are we good? Good for a podcast.
no, we are great for a podcast.
Yeah, I
You
think
so?
it's good. Yeah, thanks for inviting us on. I really enjoyed the work you're doing, and keep it up.
Thank you.
It keeps me entertained on my drive out to the casino where I work.
Oh, nice. Well, I will try to do a little better engineering on these voices.
We just want to hear you.
I just want to hear you. So yeah, I'm not like on the highway.
I can hear me.
Andy
just,
gets so loud because I have to turn air all the way up.
yeah, I gotta fix that. That's weird because that's the other thing is car radios are always your test. So my car radios, I hear myself fine. So I'll have to go listen in your car radio
Yeah.
to see what needs to do. I'll do a little better on the compression. But anyway, okay.
It's okay. There's grace.
All right, so you've been listening to Faith Over Breakfast with Pastor Eric Siepen and Pastor Andy Littleton. Please share us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thank you.